And welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Buckeye Boggs. That man over there is the Wild Man, Chris Wilds, and this is another edition of Border Wars, our recruiting special here at the OHIO podcast, where we dive into the guys from top 10 guys from each state bordering the state of Ohio. We've done Pennsylvania, we've done Indiana. Today we're looking at that state up north. Not a hotbed for recruiting for the Buckeyes. We do every now and then we'll get a guy or two from the state up north. Of course, the most famous one of all time would be my cousin Ryan Miller from the state up north.
He wasn't a bad one.
Yeah, not a bad one at all, right? We've had some good ones actually from that state up north here in recent years, but nowhere near as many as they've plucked from Ohio, and that's simply because, Chris, Ohio's better at high school football than that state up north.
Ohio's better at high school football, college football, professional football. We're better at everything than that state up north. Why?
Football in general.
Because it is, last time I checked, 7:41 on a Monday night. And Michigan still sucks.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So that being said, we are going to break down the top 10 recruits from the state of Michigan, state of heaven. What in the world? Was this West Virginia I'm talking about? The state of Michigan. And here's the thing, Chris. This is the 247 composite rankings that takes into account 247 Sports, Rivals, and On 3. And it takes those three recruiting services and combines them and spits out a number, and that composite gives you, of course, the ranking. So I think it's the most fair. In all honesty, I kind of like that composite, and so we're going to stick with that again for this video. So here we go. Number 10, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Number 10 is one Derek Simmons. Derek Simmons is ranked 538th nationally. He's the 57th highest ranked defensive lineman in the country. He plays at Frankenmuth High School. Am I pronouncing that properly?
Frankenmuth, yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Lovely little Christmas town.
Yes, that's right. He's a 3-star at 538 nationally, like I said, 6'3", 270 pounds, and is currently committed to Sparty.
You know, I think this is a good get for Sparty as they're trying to build. They're trying to build that base, I think that reputation in Michigan. This is a guy who I think is a project guy, but definitely has some skill. But I like him going to Sparty. I do. I think that's a good place for him to be. I think he's going to be with a great coach who will maximize his potential.
Yeah, and this is one of two guys that we're going to mention on this list, this top 10 list that's going there. It's going to be interesting as we work our way to the top, what you see developing in the state here. But let's move on to number 9 if you're ready.
Let's do it.
Help me out with this first name, brother.
Nakai Wynn.
And Nakai, not Inkai. Gotcha. Okay. Nakai Wynn is the 9th ranked recruit from the state up north. He's an interior offensive lineman from Muskegon, Michigan. 6'5", 277 pounds. Good size for a guard. He's ranked 528th nationally. He's the 34th highest ranked interior lineman in the country, and he is currently committed. Chris, are you ready for this? Rutgers.
Yeah, let me tell you, Eric, I think Greg Schiano is getting a diamond in the rough here. This is a kid that's athletic. He's got decent quickness, good coordination. He's very physical. He has played some tackle in high school. Like you said, being recruited as an interior lineman. But this is a guy who I really feel like Greg Schiano, if he puts a little bit of weight on him, gets him in the weight room, Greg Schiano can turn this guy into a potential NFL player.
Okay, so that moves us on to number 8 here, and I've got a comment here that I think is going to be very interesting to a lot of people, who are Buckeye fans, that is. Number 8 is Darren Stray. Now, Darren is a 6'7", 300-pound offensive tackle from Paw Paw, Michigan. He is 469th nationally. He's the 40th highest ranked offensive tackle, and he is currently committed. This is a name, if you've been following these border wars that we've been doing, he's going to Kentucky. Now, this is the kind of guy Justin Fry should have been on the phone with months ago, developing a relationship with him so that in case you got to where we currently sit at Ohio State with our offensive line recruiting, you could get on the phone and try to flip this guy. Now, there's been 0 phone calls made to him. No, this guy is literally driving through your state to go to college south of you. And you have a need. You have a need. There's been 0 contact to Darren Stray. Now, is it because, well, we thought we were going to get, David Sanders Jr.? Well, sure, probably. Well, you thought, and you were wrong. This is a guy who you could develop. Yes, he would have to be developed, but you could develop him if you have faith in your development skills to bring him in, and within 3 to 4 years, he's making an impact on your offensive line.
Yeah, Eric, because this is a kid who, like you said, he's athletic. He's got some flexibility. He's got quickness.
Great size.
And he's got a high football IQ. Eric, the guy's a coach's kid. He's a coach's kid. He understands the game of football.
Yeah.
And Justin Fry lets this guy go to Kentucky.
Not only Justin Fry, but apparently Sparty in Michigan did as well.
Eric, the guy as a junior had 96 pancake blocks. 96 as a junior in high school.
Do you think
a man-child who I think just because maybe he wasn't playing at the highest level there.
Right, it's at a smaller division, but dominance is still dominance. And he is only a 3-star. I understand that. But what have you and I been preaching for years on this show?
That the rankings don't know what they're saying.
3-star offensive linemen in the Midwest are made differently.
We've said Nick Mangold, 3-star offensive lineman. That turned out pretty good for Ohio State and the New York Jets.
Pat Elflein,
again, pretty good for Ohio State. You know what? Didn't turn out too bad for Minnesota, I believe he played.
Mm-hmm.
3-star offensive lineman in the Midwest.
Didn't he also play for Detroit? Or am I making that up in my head?
But again, 3-star offensive linemen in the Midwest go on to have successful college
you can develop them
careers if they're properly developed. There is no reason this guy should be traveling to SEC country. None.
Let me give you the list of schools that he officially visited: Stanford, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Northwestern. Now,
Stanford, that tells me the guy's pretty serious about his education.
He's very intelligent, yes. But he went to Kentucky. He also had offers from Ole Miss, Rutgers, Louisville, Purdue, Oregon offered him, Penn State. This guy is not, just because there's the 3-star, doesn't mean that he's, and Michigan State offered him. There is no Michigan or Ohio State offer on this guy's list, and I think that's criminal. I really do.
Yeah, it is. And, we've talked about it before, Eric. A lot of that has to do with just flat out bad recruiting on the part of Ohio State's offensive line coach. And maybe this kid fell through the cracks a little bit as, Sharon Moore was looking to take his leap into the big seat. But I don't know. I can't imagine that 2 powerhouse programs let a guy who's got all this potential and all this intelligence slip through their fingers and go to Kentucky. And let me tell you something, Stoops is going to have a lot of fun with this kid.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, this is an SEC kid. I mean, you can tell like he's going to go down there and have a successful career. Watch. Mark my words. All right, number 7. Jace, and I believe it's Clarizio.
Mm-hmm.
So you can about guess where he's going based on that picture that was chosen there.
Yeah.
This is the top running back in the state up north, and he plays at East Lansing High School. So he's staying home. 6 foot, 190 pounds, 3-star running back, 36th highest ranked running back in the country, 455th overall, and going to stay right there home in East Lansing. This is a no-brainer for them. No brainer for him. There's no one else that had a shot to get this kid.
No.
when you're growing up in the shadows of Michigan State, I mean, come on.
Yeah, and it's a good get for Michigan State. The local kid stays home. I think he's going to have a good career there. Not a guy that's super flashy, super fascinating, but he is a good, solid running back. Good guy. He runs between the tackles strong. Doesn't have blazing speed. Does have a decent burst. Eric, this is a guy who I think Michigan State is going to be able to give the ball to a lot as he develops, and yeah, he's got the potential to be a 1,000-yard rusher. But I again, not flashy, not a huge name, just the kind of guy that goes out there and gets it done.
Yep. This is a big win for them. And this is the second of 2 guys in the top 10 that Sparty got. But here's what I want to go from it with here. Number 11 is Charles White, committed to Michigan State. Number 15 is Damari Malone, committed to Michigan State. Number 16 ranked in the state is Jaden Savory, committed to Michigan State. Number 17 in the state is Bryson Williams, committed to Michigan State. Number 24 in the state is Justin Bell, committed to Michigan State. Do you hear a theme going on here? Michigan State has done very good under their new regime in starting to win and lock down the state. That's huge.
Well, we saw that. I mean, let's face it, we've seen that firsthand, Eric. One of our biggest gripes is that we don't get enough kids from Ohio. And yes, we go out and we get that 5-star talent, but a big part of tradition, a big part of, owning the rivalry, a big part of Ohio State football is those kids from inside Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start losing those kids to the competition, be it Kentucky, be it Notre Dame, be it that state up north, there's a shift. Michigan is going to feel a shift because they are losing that home recruiting base, as the coaches at Michigan State apparently are doing a good job of making friends with those high school coaches around the state right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to get that inside track.
Yeah. You should be willing. I firmly believe this in recruiting. You should be willing to take some guys you normally wouldn't take, especially early on in your coaching tenure, to win some high school coaches over.
Absolutely.
So that in the next few years, when they've got the 4 and 5 stars on their roster, you've already got that relationship built in already.
And we've talked about it in relation to Ohio State, Eric. If you're going to take a low 4-star from out of state, why wouldn't you take a high 3-star from in-state?
It's practically the same.
It's practically the same thing, but you got a kid who's going to have some attachment, some skin in the game.
Who understands the rivalry already.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Number 6. This is the enigma of this top 10. Chris and I, before we started recording, were trying to figure something out about him. Xavier Newsome. There's very little information on the kid outside of his measurables. 6'5", 220, big kid, edge rusher from Martin Luther King out of Detroit, Michigan, a famous high school, one of probably the more popular high schools in the state. Ranked 437th nationally, 31st at his position, 6th in the state, like I said. He's visited a couple schools, and there's nothing on him.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of footage, Eric, but what I'm seeing is a kid who's got a lot of raw talent, who needs to, if he's going to play the edge at the next level, obviously bulk up a little bit. But again, raw talent. But again, you look at that list of people who have offered him. You look at the list of people who,
Who he's
everybody's
visited?
cold. Yeah, who he's visited. Everybody's
Kansas,
cool. Yeah, Kansas,
Tulane, Bowling Green,
Louisville.
and I guess Kansas would be the best program there.
Yeah, and he's the sixth best player in your state. That's an issue.
Yeah, that
I
there's
mean,
something going on there that we don't know.
because you would think, if nothing else, Michigan, Michigan State, heck, Toledo, those three schools you'd think should be right at the top of that list. Go after this kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Nothing.
you would think. You would think. All right, number 5. Let's get into the top 5. Let's move on to Bobby Kanka. Defensive lineman, 421st nationally from Howe, Michigan, 44th at his position, at 6'4", 285. And he's committed to go to Ann Arbor and play for the U of Dum.
This is, I think, a decent pickup for the University of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy who's athletic. He has played tight end in addition to playing defensive line. I think he's probably going to be on that interior defensive line as he's bulked up a bit from his tight end days. But he to me again is a project, solid, but nothing that extremely stands out to me. I think he's a guy who, if he gets a little bit better with the footwork, a little bit better with the hands, he's got a good explosive first step. If he gets those other two things in check, I think he's a guy who could definitely, be a player.
Okay, moving on. Number 4. How about Cameron Flowers? Cameron Flowers is the top wide receiver from the state up north. He is one of only 3 4-stars in the state at 419th nationally, 5'11", 170 pounds from West Bloomfield, and 63rd highest ranked wide receiver in the country, and is currently committed to go to Holy Toledo.
Yeah, that one surprises me a little.
Yeah, especially Michigan State offered.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a quick kid. I mean, he's quick. He's a fast kid, decent hands. I'm really surprised that Michigan, given their, let's face it, their wide receiver room is not great. How can you not be in on this kid when he's one of the top players in your state? He is a 4-star. I mean, why? I'm sorry, he's still a 3-star, isn't he? No,
He's a 4-star. Yeah, he's a 4-star.
He's a 4-star. Why are you not in on this kid?
No, he's a very low 4-star. I think
he's a low 4-star, but their room may have some stars, but not a whole heck of a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to start throwing it against the wall and see what sticks at the wide receiver position in Ann Arbor, and this kid looks like a good place to start. And again, crickets. I don't get it.
Yep. All right, number 3. This cat I like, Elijah Dotson. He plays at Belleville in Detroit, Michigan. He's a safety with good size, 6'2", 175, 398th nationally, so he's also a low 4-star, but he is a 4-star, 36th highest ranked safety in the country, and currently committed to Pitt.
Yeah, and again, this is a guy who offers flexibility, multiple position player. He is a hard matchup one-on-one if you're a receiver. I don't get it. He's a physical player. Again, the type of thing that I would think that Michigan or Sparty would be after. But you know what? I mean, again, Pitt's where he's going. And I'll tell you what, I think Pitt got themselves a good one because, like you said, decent size, decent speed, very physical. What more can you want in a safety? And he's a guy that, should your nickel go down, you can slide him up there. He can return kicks for you. Why not?
Is he Michigan, Ohio State caliber?
He's not Ohio State caliber, no, but
Borderline. He's borderline. You would, given the
maybe.
amount of scholarships we're moving towards, I would take a flyer on him.
Yeah, with the extended scholarships, I'd take a flyer on the kid
Yeah,
because
I mean, if you had a class of 21, no, I'm not. But with a class of 35, yeah, I would take a flyer on him.
yeah, I mean, I would too because you know what, you get a kid with this kind of talent in there, and you get him dealing with a Tim Walton, you get him dealing with our new safeties coach there, whose name for some reason slips my mind. I just call him the cat from Indiana.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, you get these guys training this kid up, you may have a great one.
Yeah, I like his versatility
Yes.
myself. So there's that. But you're thinking of Matt Guerreri.
Thank you, Coach G.
There you go, Coach G. I like it. Number 2, Avery Gatch. He is the second highest ranked recruit from the state up north. He's an interior offensive lineman. He's the best offensive lineman in the state. He's ranked 242nd nationally. He's a 4-star, 13th best interior offensive lineman in the country. He plays at Wiley E. Groves High School in Franklin, Michigan, and he's going to Michigan. This is Michigan's best recruit from their state.
Yeah, and he is a good one. He's a physical guy. He could put on some more muscle mass and add to that strength a little bit. But he's a decent athlete. And again, if there's one thing Michigan has done well over the course of the last 3 years, it's develop offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
So I really feel like this is a good get for them. I think he's a guy that could be a multiple-year starter for them. I don't see him starting as a freshman, but this is a guy who could come in, see some minutes as a sophomore, and really his junior and senior year make a name for himself.
Now that we've spoken about Avery, you have Bobby and Avery, the defensive lineman and the offensive lineman. These are the only 2 recruits from the state up north in the class of 2025 in the top 40 in the composite rankings that are going to U of M.
Yeah.
That's it. 2. Can you imagine what we would be doing as Ohio State fans if we only had 2 kids from Ohio in the current 2025 class?
Oh, we would go nuts. We would lose our minds when we have a half dozen kids in the class from Ohio. It's just unfathomable that you're giving away your home state. This is your pipeline.
Yes, the argument that is going to be made is that the talent in the state up north isn't as good in 2025, and this is true. That is a true statement. But that does not mean you abandon your state.
But not only that, but are you judging that off the stars? Because as we've said many times, those people who assign those stars, I think they enjoy the joy juice a little bit every now and then, because let me tell you, sometimes those stars don't really equate to the talent that these guys have.
Agreed. All right, let's look at number 1. A name everybody probably knows. It's Bryce Underwood. His name has been circling in recruiting circles for years now, ever since he was a youngster. 6'3.5", 205-pound quarterback from Belleville. He's ranked number 1 in the nation according to the 247 composite. He's the number 1 ranked quarterback, again, according to the 247 composite. Now, I know that there's someone from Bellefontaine, Ohio that is challenging that, and On3 has him at number 1 and not Bryce. I would say that Tavian St. Clair's performance at the Elite 11 leads me to believe he's better than Bryce, but Bryce owns the composite. He's not only the number 1 recruit from the state up north, he's the number 1 overall recruit according to the composite, and he is going to LSU.
How? And don't get me wrong, I am so thankful for this. We got our guy. I
Right.
am glad we don't have to see this guy till a playoff game because I'll tell you what, he is talented. He
Yeah.
is uber talented. The guy has a cannon for an arm. He can put it into the tight windows. He's an athlete. He can move. He can extend plays. Everything about this guy says first round draft pick. I'm telling you, if I am a Michigan or Michigan State fan, I am losing my mind that we had the best quarterback in the country in our own backyard, and he's going to play for Brian Kelly of all people.
Yeah.
He's going down to Louisiana State. And now, if I'm in his position and I look over the past few years, Louisiana State's not a bad place to play. I mean, you had Joe Burrow win a Heisman down there. Jaden Daniels just won a Heisman down there. Um, but yeah, if I'm a Michigan fan, I am going absolutely berserk. How do you lose the best player in the country who is in your own backyard? I don't get it. I don't.
The reason why I don't think this seems to sting with the fans of the maize and blue and the green and white as much.
It's because they've got Alex Orgy
No. Well, they're coming off of their greatest season in my lifetime.
for now.
But beyond that, this kid has shown zero interest in the hometown schools since day one.
Yeah, I mean,
Zero interest.
I think he had more
And
interest in Akron than he had in Michigan.
he wanted to go south. Like this was whether he's from Belleville, Michigan or Columbus, Ohio, he wanted to go south. Just it's gonna happen sometimes. Now, will it stick in this modern era of I need to play immediately and transfer portal and NIL and like will he remain at LSU for the tenure of his career? I don't know. That remains to be seen. And quarterback recruiting is so fickle because what has happened at Ohio State where they've been able to keep all five of their quarterbacks on the roster throughout the offseason into 2025 is such a rarity, Chris, in
Yeah,
this modern era. So I'm not saying that he would leave LSU and go to Ann Arbor or East Lansing. It might be somewhere else, but that remains to be seen what he does when he gets down to Baton Rouge. But he ain't staying. He ain't staying home. That's for sure. But this is definitely. This has got to be. This is like if Woody Hayes was coach of Ohio State, and he's up there recruiting this kid, and he says, "I really want to go to LSU." This is when Woody Hayes would go. You know what, son? I'd love to have you, but that's probably if you're not going to come to Columbus, that's the best choice you can make, son.
Absolutely.
That's what Woody Hayes would say to a young man like this. So that way he don't have to coach against him in the Big Ten and in the last day of November because he's a difference maker. I have compared him to Terrell Pryor. What
I
do you
can
think
see
of that?
that.
What do
I
you
can
think of
see
that
that.
comparison? Like Terrell
I
Pryor.
don't know that he's.
See, Terrell Pryor, in my opinion, I still believe Terrell Pryor had one of the best high school films for a quarterback I have ever seen.
Yeah, Terrell was a little bit bigger, wasn't he?
Slightly.
Slightly. When didn't Terrell come in at around 215?
I mean, he was over 200, but he's got the height.
Yeah, the height's there at 6'3.5". I think he's a little more slight than what Terrell was. Uh, but I don't. I mean, I think in their games there's a lot of similarity as well.
Yeah.
So I could see how that's a good comparison.
I just kind of what came to my mind, watching this kid's film over the years, and I've watched him a lot. He is a lefty as well. So immediately, when you're watching his film and you watch like Ayers before him and you see but the kid's got amazing arm strength,
Yes.
tremendous athleticism.
He can fit
So,
it in a window too, Eric. The accuracy
yeah.
is there.
So, thank goodness he's not going to Ann Arbor. That's all we have to say about that. So,
You know what? That and we got our guy, so I'm okay with it.
there you go. All right, so this video is not done. Several months ago, it's been a while. I sat down and interviewed Travis from the Spartan Savants podcast about recruiting in the state up north and kind of where they're at as a program and where he saw Michigan at as a program when it comes to recruiting. So some of the information you're going to be given in this hasn't been updated. We just updated you on it. Some of these guys are committed now who weren't committed then. So look over that. But the overall idea of what we were talking about in that interview is still good stuff for all of you. We're gonna play that now to end the show in this episode. So thank you again from Travis from the Spartan Savants for joining us to talk border wars in the state up north. And we'll be back. We're going to keep doing this because this is important. As Urban Meyer used to say, Chris, the lifeblood of your program is recruiting.
Can
So
we
you
get Urban?
better pay
Can,
attention.
can we get Urban to talk to Justin Fry about that?
Yeah, that needs to happen, doesn't it?
Lifeblood is all about recruiting, absolutely. And you know he's right. He's right because if you don't get the recruits in there, you don't win.
Yep. So make sure you hit the like button, share, subscribe, do all those great things. It really does help the channel out. We're going to exit stage left, and Travis is going to come in. I'm going to interview him again from the Spartan Savants. Check that out. We'll be back with another Border Wars soon, guys. All right, guys, we're back for the OHO podcast now. This is Border Wars. We're doing a Michigan episode, and of course, when we're talking recruiting, we can't miss the opportunity to talk to our friends over at the Spartan Savants. This is Travis from our sister podcast at the College Huddle, the Spartan Savants, and Travis, we're talking recruiting in the state of Michigan now. Michigan's interesting to me. And and from your perspective as a Michigan State fan, we don't follow Michigan State recruiting as closely as our mutual enemy there in our Ann Arbor. But I want to ask you this question because we have been preaching on our show for years that D'Antonio had the blueprint for success for any program in the Midwest not named Ohio State or Michigan, and that is to go to the state of Ohio and literally take all the recruits that Ohio State didn't offer, who are high 3-stars and 4-star guys, and build a program off those. Number one, they already hate maize and blue. And number two, now they hate Ohio State because they didn't offer them.
Yeah.
And D'Antonio kicked our butt with those guys. And we, as Ohio State fans, we hated it. And it seemed like when D'Antonio stepped down, Michigan State stopped doing that. We don't see you guys in the state of Ohio nearly as much recruiting as D'Antonio did. Now I understand he came from Tressel, came from Columbus. He already had a lot of relationships with Ohio high school coaches. But then it's really interesting. Luke Fickell did the same thing at Cincinnati and took his team, just like D'Antonio did, all the way to the college football playoff. And now, if you people who've been paying close attention, it's happening south of us in Kentucky. They have come up to Ohio and are recruiting the Buckeye State heavy. Now you've got Jonathan Smith comes in. He's not an Ohio guy. He's not a Midwestern guy. What is Michigan State's recruiting philosophy going into this season?
Okay, so to answer that, I think we kind of got to go all the way back to those points you made about D'Antonio.
History lesson. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. D'Antonio, from the beginning, was preaching those rivalries and needing to better recruit. And it wasn't just Ohio he went in there and did that. He stole recruits right out from that who didn't get attention from Michigan, didn't get attention from Notre Dame, even out to Penn State and that. And so those recruits would, like you said, want to show what they can do for being overlooked by those schools, and it was a perfect blueprint. I think I even wrote an article for the College Huddle that spoke kind of about that. And so that was the blueprint to build the successful culture there. When he stepped down at the end of his tenure as the coach, he wasn't quite landing as many 4 stars or getting in the conversation as many 4 stars as he had. With his development, that's the way things. Working with 2 and 3 stars was the way that he was able to build the program. But you can't without getting a 4 star there eventually. Um, but when he stepped down or retired, and they brought in Mel Tucker seemed to go to more of a national recruiting approach, where D'Antonio, uh, for to be recruited, from my understanding, was you to be recruited by Michigan State, you had to. It wasn't necessarily that you had to be near like a local prospect or anything, but you had to attend their camps. He wasn't gonna recruit anybody who didn't first show up at their camps. So that's the kind of deal there. Tucker decided he was going to go build the national footprint, which he did. To his credit, he did a very good job of that and got us in some, not necessarily pick, but got us in some final, uh, top three choices with some of the big. Um, and he also fixed a little bit of a broken relationship with some of the Detroit schools that came from the firing of Curtis Blackwell over some legal matters, that kind of thing. Um, now that, but Tucker didn't really concentrate as much on the local recruits. I mean, he got good top rated guys across the state of Michigan and stuff like that, but he didn't, like you said, do what D'Antonio had been doing, going across the Midwest, finding these undervalued guys and everything. And I think that kind of, again, something you mentioned, that kind of allowed Kentucky to come in there. You've seen uh, in Michigan, they've landed like 6 top 15 Michigan players over the last 4 or 5 years, and that didn't used to happen at all. With Jonathan Smith, I think you're seeing him kind of tap into the history of what D'Antonio did there, and that blueprint there. We've already got a guy from Ohio who committed to next year's class. There's a guy we landed right before signing day this year, undervalued 3 star receiver from Ohio. So he's kind of gone into there and just kind of, you look at the recruiting class we have this year. He's got Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Tennessee. So he's kind of combining the approaches. He's still got the national uh, reach, bringing in some Texas guys. We just got a recruit from the DFW week for 2025, and then he's starting to look at Ohio more and trying to overtake Michigan again in those Michigan recruits, which is going to be easier said than done. The way this is going. And then he brought in some of the Oregon State players, or the guys that had committed to him at Oregon State. And one thing that people don't really understand is there's a couple guys in that class from Hawaii, and you think Hawaii and Michigan State, you don't really think they go together. And then you look at the history, and well, Duffy Doherty recruited 10 or 11 guys from Hawaii in the 60s, 70s, build up program back then. So there used to be a pipeline from Hawaii to Michigan State. So he's kind of tapping into that. I don't know how much further he's going to be able to go into it these days, but it's good to see him kind of go after those routes. So I would say, long answer turned short. He's combining a bunch of approaches from coaches of the past and trying to mesh them together, which I think is a good approach going forward. Should net better recruiting classes. I think it's already made some progress, especially his. You get all these recruits, especially Nick Marsh, one of our freshmen. His mom and him have both talked about how much of how good Jonathan Smith is with relationships and stuff like that. That's going to be tremendous. And Demetrius, I believe his last name is Martin. He's our new secondary coach. Used to play at State. Came over from Oregon. We call him Coach Pete. He's already brought in. He's already done his part in bringing in a bunch of highly touted yet undervalued prospects in that realm. Hopefully it just keeps coming up because it all sounds pretty positive right now.
When people clicked on this episode, I bet no one thought they would hear Honolulu, Hawaii, and East Lansing, Michigan in the same sentence.
It-
that I did not anticipate. Although your jerseys look kind of similar, if you go back to the early 2000s Hawaii jerseys before they went all 90s retro with the rainbow look. But anyways, let's talk a little bit about the state of Michigan high school football. You go and look at the 2025 top 10 recruits from the state of Michigan according to 247 composite. Obviously, Bryce Underwood is the star there, 5-star, heading to LSU. And then you got, sprinkled in there a 2 4-stars and then a lot of 3-stars after that. So let me ask you the question. I'm not as up to date on Michigan high school football and recruiting. How is the overall health of the state of Michigan when it comes to Division One football recruits?
I think at least based off of that, I think it's fine. I mean, based off of that class, there are usually more 4-stars that come out of there. I would think that it's so early at the point with that class. Some of those guys are going to move up to 4-stars by the time it's all said. I think looking at their ratings right now for the class that has a whole another year to commit basically is, not necessarily indicative of where the class is going to be. Um, so I think the talent's probably the same as it's always been. I mean, I'm not based in Michigan anymore, so I don't really get to see a lot of it. But I haven't heard anything uh, to the contrary, anything that says that it's falling apart or anything like that. And they're producing Bryce Underwoods, they're producing top level guys. So I would say it's good, but we need to try to be keeping those guys home. There's too much SEC flavor in there right now.
Yeah, there actually really is. Yeah, you just scroll down through who's already committed, and there's LSU, there's Kentucky, there's, even though they're not SEC, but they're ACC. You see Pitt snuck in there and grabbed Elijah Dotson, the safety from Detroit. And then we were just talking about Kentucky early. Guess what? Kentucky's got one, the tackle Darren Stray from Paw, Michigan. Paw. I mean, okay, whatever.
Wherever you find them, well,
Yeah, is that an Upper Peninsula, somewhere up in the Upper Peninsula? Paw. Um,
actually not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I never heard that one before. But as you scroll on through, yeah, Michigan's got Avery and Bobby, the interior offensive lineman, top defensive lineman in the state, and then you see a lot of Spartan recruits. It looks like he might not have been able to grab. Talking about Jonathan Smith, he might not have been able to grab maybe the top, 5, 6, 7 guys, but after that, he's making bank in the state, which tells me he's making the inroads, and the coaching staff is making more inroads with the local Michigan high school coaching staff and players than the actual team from Ann Arbor is. Are they maybe gotten a little bit too big for their britches over the past couple years when it comes to just recruiting the local kids?
I mean, I just think that he's he's going to he's doing the necessary work that needs to be done because I mean we have a lot of ground to make up.
Okay.
We've landed some big top 10 Michigan recruits before we, but after couple years, you know how it is. You don't win a few games. Well, Ohio State might not know how it is, but in general, you can understand how recruiting would fluctuate in, especially only winning 9 games over the last 2 years. Their 4-8 seasons not going to do much for you in recruiting wise, um, especially with all the stuff that came out, Mel Tucker and how the program was run and all the uncertainty of who's sticking around. So I just, I mean, he's doing what he needs to do, and hopefully it turns into results.
Okay. All right. Wow. Fair enough. Um, Let me ask you this question. Do you have a good pulse of maybe like how is the state kind of divided between Ann Arbor and East Lansing as far as you would think maybe, fans as kids growing up? Like is it 60-40? Is it 50-50? What's it kind of like in the state of Michigan when it comes to that?
I would say, I mean, I don't really know how it is now. It's probably more skewed to Michigan now because of that championship, unfortunately. But
Right.
um, I would say, kind of from what I recall, it fluctuates based on who the better team is. Like, I remember when I was growing up, Michigan was usually the better team, and it was really annoying. And they would get all these recruits. Everywhere you go, there'd be Michigan jerseys and all these Michigan fans. Then D'Antonio came in, and all of a sudden, State was the better team, eventually, to the point where I think when I was shortly after I graduated college or whatever, all these recruits from Michigan were suddenly saying, "Yeah, I don't remember Michigan ever being good. State's always been the good team." So it it's kind of gone that way, and then I think it's probably started to turn back toward Michigan because of these past couple seasons that they've had. So I mean, that's generally how it goes. And of course, they've had quite a few legacy recruits come in there with Will Johnson and Aiden Hutchinson. That helps them a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, they get much more national attention in general. It's the way it always is. The way the media is. The national media generally is, with all these older brands that you know claim to be the founders of college football. So,
Yeah. All right. How do Spartan fans view, last recruiting question for you. How do Spartan fans view the what we here in the North are calling the Big Three in Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame? Like what's the perception and what's the view from Spartan fans in
uh,
terms of recruiting?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We know what you all think about us as
Oh,
just football programs, but
um, I would say with Ohio State, I think there was a time, probably probably during D'Antonio's tenure, where we thought we were about to be recruiting at you guys' level and about to kind of stay there, especially after that playoff appearance. We thought we were going to be good for a while. Um, but since then, we kind of obviously we've fallen off, and we're like, okay, well, if usually it's in terms of recruiting, usually it's if Ohio State's in on this guy, we're probably not getting him. And unfortunately, it's kind of turned that way with Michigan too. Uh, it didn't used to be. It used to be, oh, Michigan can't develop 5 stars. Michigan gets all these big time recruits, and they do nothing with them. Why would you ever want to go there? But now, over the past couple of years, they've kind of proven. Obviously, it's generally a new coaching staff this year, but they've kind of proven that okay, I guess they do turn out some big recruits, and so that um, that has kind of flipped the switch on them to go that way with them, and we just we can't stand when we're in the same. We can't stand that somebody's considering Michigan in general just because of who we are. Um, and it sucks losing recruits to them, especially. But at the same time, we're like, we know we need to build back up our recruiting, kind of build back up our footprint. And then in terms of Notre Dame, I hate to say it because I mean, growing up in a house that was Spartan fans and Wolverines, uh, I was taught to hate Notre Dame at an early age. But I would say now I probably hated them more back then than I do now, simply because we don't play them. Like the Michigan State and Notre Dame rivalry used to be an annual thing. It was our
Mhm.
biggest non-conference football game, and I remember when I was in my freshman year of college, we got crushed by them in East Lansing, and I was really pissed about it. And then the next year, we lost on a phantom pass interference call that would have given us an undefeated season. So everybody that, um, and it's just like there's so much history in that rivalry. There was big, especially going back to the 50s and 60s with the big national championship contention and everything like that. Um, I really I was very unhappy when they said they were going to stop that rivalry, and we haven't played them since 2017, and we don't play them again till 2025, I think it is, and then 2026, and then never again, at least at this point, because we don't know the schedule beyond that. So I would say the recruiting, in terms of recruiting views by the fans, from my perspective, we don't really concern ourselves with Notre Dame unless we're going head to head for a big recruit, like we're in the top 2 or 3, and it's down to those guys, or like they land legacy kid with Cedric Irvin Jr. and Plexico Burris' kid, I believe. So with the absence of the rivalry, it just doesn't sting as much. So we're not as concerned. We're more concerned with the teams that we're playing against.
Right. Gotcha. Hey, man, that's I get it. Like the only times that Ohio State really thinks about Notre Dame, other than the past 2 years when we played them, is when they go down to Cincinnati to the Catholic schools and try to recruit, and they're like, "We want that kid." Then all of a sudden, there's a concern there for us. But typically, yeah, we don't think about them. But that might change here very, very soon, because I have a feeling Notre Dame's going to be in the Big Ten with this next round of expansion that's going to be happening.
I hope so. I mean, they've gotten themselves so aligned with the ACC, though. It's just
Well, that's about to fall apart.
yeah, exactly. You need to wait for the ACC to fall apart for them to come crawling back. But yeah,
Yeah. Awesome, man. Hey, Travis, tell everybody where they can find the Spartan Savants podcast at.
yeah, we are on thecollegehuddle.com. There you can find links to our YouTube and Twitter channels. We'll have Instagram up soon. Our Twitter handle is at Spartan Savants. And then our show goes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and basically everywhere else you can find podcasts that you do. So easily findable. It's like what I like to tell people, if you know what you're doing. So
That's right. We'll be putting those links in the comments or down in the show notes as well for everybody. So be sure to go give them a like, thumbs up, follow. If you know a Michigan State fan, hey, let them know. Say, are you following the Spartan Savants? If you're not, what are you doing? They're on the College Huddle. So go tell everybody that good stuff too. Travis, we will be previewing this little game between us later this season. So we'll be in touch again. Until then, Travis, thank you so much for joining us here on the OHIO podcast Border Wars.
thanks, Eric.
All right, take care.